I guess the original talk was supposed to be the state of DeFi security, but there were just so many hacks and the field has grown so much in the past year that we'd probably need a full day just to scratch the surface here. So we'll focus just on the NFTs and we'll cover all the variety of different aspects of that field, the security aspects of that field in this presentation. So I'll skip on the intros. That was excellent. Thank you so much, Rajiv. But the main thing I wanted to point out is that do subscribe to the newsletter. I try to capture all the latest news on the weekly basis. So if you want to stay on top of the field, check it out. So let's talk about NFT security. NFT scams and hacks in the past year resulted in the loss of around $122 million. This quarter alone, the first quarter of 2022, we have already blew up to $137 million. So if you're seeing a pattern, like we're quadrupled from year to year, the pattern is very similar to what we've been observing within DeFi space, where we went from around $200 million stolen back in 2020 when we were just getting started to over $1 billion quickly last year. So unfortunately, we're following the same trajectory. So it's very important to start learning the lessons so we can flatten that curve as much as we could. What is out of scope for this talk? We're not going to talk about the criminal use of NFT. So I'm not going to discuss RezzleCons and trying to money launder, the stolen assets. If you don't know what RezzleCon is, Google it. There's a Netflix documentary, I think, coming about the exploits of this couple. Wash trading, trying to buy and sell your own NFT for a variety of reasons. The myriad of rug pulls and phishing attacks, which do not require some kind of security weakness or vulnerability. So if it's something that is just playing on social engineering people, playing on just human weaknesses, it's out of scope for this particular talk. And of course, like Twitter hijacks, the million of NFT Discord server takeovers to drop fake airdrops. And as I mentioned, DeFi ecosystem as a whole are outside of the scope. What's in scope is we will discuss a threat model for just various aspects of the NFT security ecosystem. We will navigate point by point within that threat model. We'll discuss different incidents and lessons that we can extract from all of these incidents. And then just a quick takeaway that you can bring home whenever you're interacting with NFTs or building a new project. What are the top 5 things that you need to consider when implementing security for your projects? And with that, let's jump into the threat model. There's a lot going on here, but what I wanted to point out when we think about NFT hacks, I think a lot of people are attracted to like, oh, there's this amazing, sexy new contract exploit, re-entrancy, yada, yada, and so on. That's just one part of the model that you need to consider. There are a whole bunch of other components. Who is, for example, on the far right, who is managing your administrator keys? Are your private keys that secure? Who's managing the keys for the creators who created those NFT contracts? The blockchain that everything sits on top of. Can you trust that? Are there exploits where someone can take away all the security controls that you come to expect? And then if you're running a marketplace or some kind of dApp, are you sure your web server is secure? Can someone compromise that and put someone else's contracts into it? And of course, we have to talk about users and wallet security, because if people cannot trust their wallets, cannot trust the process of interacting with your NFTs, not just your NFTs, but NFT protocol, NFT model itself, then the field will not be as secure as it could be. And on the very bottom, one thing that is also unique to this ecosystem is we have to think about where do you store all those JPEGs. I mean, before everything was decentralized, everything in the blockchain. Now you have an extra server that you're going to run everything on. Are you posting it all on your Google Drive share, or are you doing something more secure? So with that, let's dive into individual components and discuss like what are the actual real life incidents and implications that happen there. So let's talk about wallets and by implication, user security. The craziest thing that I've seen in the past year are the approval farming attacks. One example of them is the February 19, 2022, this year, OpenSea users lost $3.4 million in various NFTs as part of a phishing campaign. Still not clear what the entrance point was, how they navigated to this malicious page or how they were generating those transactions. But all of those approval farming attacks, they have one thing similar. You're enticed to sign a transaction. You approve the transfer of your assets that you don't expect to transfer. And the reason is that, look at the pop-up here. There's a hexadecimal payload, and you're approving all sorts of stuff, and it's very hard to decipher. I mean, even I can take the payload. Okay, I'm going to extract the 4-byte. What is the function that I'm calling? What is the ABI? What are the parameters? Am I doing the right thing? Am I transferring the right token? There's no way people are going to try to understand what's going on in those pop-ups. So there's a real issue with the poor UX and the just sheer complexity of data that we throw at users, that maybe they don't understand what is it that they're doing when they are signing those transactions, which enables attackers to take advantage of them as part of this farming all those approvals. Malicious marketplaces, one way or another, users through social engineering channels, or maybe they made a typo in the URL. If they end up on some kind of malicious resource, one example was VeriSwap, also in March of this year. A variety of things can go wrong. Either you get malware dumped in your machine, which will steal all of your private keys, or in this case, it was an example of, again, approving a transfer of one of your assets. The issue here is that we need to go beyond just saying, hey, this is a known blocklisted domain, VeriSwap, now that we heard of it. There's no way we're going to catch up to every new domain that is getting registered and getting new phishing attack that is getting thrown at users. We really need to think about kind of like a dynamic heuristics that we can say, hey, you're about to approve a transfer of your ape, and that is not expected, and it follows a pattern, a transaction pattern, which is known to be malicious. Are you sure you want to do this? So think of AV engine / Chrome safe browsing experience, but for NFT wallets. That's missing for now, but I'm optimistic that we'll build a good solution soon. And of course, we also need to consider privacy. You see, NFTs are unique in that they kind of bridge the Web3 and Web2 worlds. On one side, you're all on the blockchain and you're trading and sending all those things, all your NFT assets. But on the other hand, you're loading third-party resource from the Web2 world into users' wallets. And one exploit privacy concerning vector that was pointed out by Alex Lupascu is that, look, anytime you load a third-party resource, you're revealing all sorts of data about yourself. What is the wallet you're using? If you're sending a user agent, what is your IP address, and so on. We're not even talking about potential exploits that could be coming your way by loading those third-party assets into your application or marketplace. So something that we have to be more careful about. The other foundational piece within the NFT security ecosystem are blockchains. Do we trust them? Apparently not so much. So the now infamous record-setting DeFi compromise Ronin network that was designed to support the Axie Infinity NFT game lost $625 million worth of assets as a result of just private key compromises and just very coordinated and dedicated attacker. So in this case, like, it wasn't affecting a specific NFT project, but in the future, if you're on these you rely on these bridges to exchange your assets, you have to be mindful that it could be that the security guarantees or security expectations that you have from lower layers may not hold true. And then I guess this talk is not so much focused on the threat actors here, but something to be mindful if you want to print out this picture and put it in your office to remind you of who is it that you are against now. You're no longer against the lone wolf black hats out there. You're against well-financed state actors who are out there looking to collect funds for the state. So North Korea was implicated in the Ronin network attack, and they're far more well-financed. These are the same folks that went after the Bank of Bangladesh and tried to steal $1 billion. from the Central Bank of Bangladesh, and they failed. And now they're looking at the DeFi and sooner or later NFT space. So be mindful of how well sponsored your attacker is. Web servers, another foundational piece. We would say like, well, I mean, it's all decentralized. What do I care? Well, in case of Banksy, if your website is compromised and someone is modifying your dApp to state that, hey, there's a new airdrop, you have to pay attention to your web server infrastructure. This is all Web 2 stuff that is just as relevant to your projects as anything else. So in this case, the stolen funds were returned because the attackers were basically doxed themselves, but you may not be as lucky if that happens. The other pieces that when you talk about are just more logistics that surround your project. So NFT administrator keys. The clearest example was the Pirate X Pirate NFT game where administrator keys were stolen. And it wasn't that they try to use those keys to mint new tokens or do anything else with that. They simply modified the deposit contract that was stored on chain, where if you were depositing the tokens, they would be redirected to the attacker. So this is slightly more complex than simply just stealing the keys, minting, running off. So be mindful of how your private keys are managed. Are you using hardware wallets? Are you using some kind of multi-party computation solutions? You have to protect them just as well as anyone else. And of course, from administrator and trust within your organization, think of malicious insider. So Boardcliff's NFT taught us that if you invite a developer into your environment that has access to, let's say, your source code repo, or you're outsourcing development of your contracts, they may introduce additional snippets into your code which are highly undesirable, such as someone added this underscore creator into this only owner modifier, and then this creator was this third-party entity that started rugging all those projects that use this. So be mindful of the access controls that you implement for your entire organization. Marketplaces. So when I talk about marketplaces, I'm really talking about the dApps and the marketplaces trading engines. So one thing to consider are things like UX abuse. So the Swap Kiwi, the way that they were presenting verified tokens is they would slap that, you can see like this green checkbox on the image, and you know this is something that was very easy to forge by the users to sell unverified assets. So I'm going to go a little faster since we're running out of time. If you're parsing on-chain data, make sure you use something reliable, not just transaction logs, which are easy to forge. XSS that was triggered within actual images. Data leaks. If you're storing private keys for your users, you need to protect them just as well. Contracts. So Treasure DAO example was they were not calculating the prices correctly, so they were basically giving away free NFTs. So be mindful, do the right code audits there. And then a myriad of NFT contract exploits. So most of them are related to airdrops. So either allowing users to leak their what is the rare asset and what is not, or subverting the limitation of how many airdrops you can make. In the case of Adidas, an exploit that happened 2 days ago, bypassing the whitelisting for who can mint, and so on. I guess the point I want to leave you is this, just to capture this, and I can take questions maybe from the audience if you can speak in a mic. I'll just leave this here. Approval farming, protect your users, protect your private keys, watch out for NFT minting abuse, logic exploits in your marketplaces, and be very mindful about NFT content injection. We haven't seen the actual ODAs getting injected into users' wallets and your marketplaces, but you are basically embedding third-party assets into your environment, and they could be malicious. Okay, I think we are all out of time, but maybe I can take some questions.
Thanks,
And I know
Peter.
you're not supposed to click on QR codes at security conferences, but you know where to find me worst case.
All right. Any questions for Peter? Once here bought an NFT.
Everyone is on their phone scanning.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, folks. I'll share the slides in case you want to.
I have a question, actually. So you listed a couple of exploits in the NFT space. Some were related to smart contracts. So do you see the learnings from DeFi space in smart contract exploits translated to NFT projects?
Directly translate to NFT projects. The NFT is a subsection of a DeFi space, so the lessons do apply. But NFT exploits are unique in a sense that like they try to exploit instead of like some kind of bridging protocol where the funds are stashed. For the most part, they go after the minting or airdrop mechanism. So someone trying to bypass security controls or mint a super rare token, which they're not supposed to predict. So all the same lessons apply, plus the specific use cases. They don't want to, the attackers don't want to destroy the whole, let's say, they don't want to destroy the whole NFT project. They just want to extract what's highly valuable and sell it quickly. So that was the case with Meebits, for example, where they, Larva Labs, they leaked the hash with all the unique identifiers. The attackers were able to grab that and write a contract that would revert on anything, on any mints that were not high value.
Any other questions for Peter? If not, Peter, if you have a couple of slides that you skipped, in the interest of time, please feel free to share those statistics or insights. We do? Okay. We do have one more question in the room.
With Coinbase's NFT application soon coming, what are your biggest worries about that?
Well, all of this, part of the reason why I was deep diving into NFT ecosystem is that we are exploring NFT marketplace. So on Coinbase, so we anywhere from scams to criminal use of NFTs to exploits, we have to be mindful of all of them.
Okay, one more.
Thank you, Peter, for your presentation and your very interesting newsletter. I had the impression, if I've read it through the months, that there's more and more phishing coming up, and I think that's something perhaps from the traditional Web2 sphere. It's the lowest effort, but it gets the job done. Do you see this as well, or?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at the past year, I think was it Elliptic that posted the 12 billion number for the total compromises. 2 billion of that was the traditional smart contract exploits. 10 billion of that were scams and rug pulls and phishing and all of that stuff. I'm not as excited about that's definitely the majority of where the compromises are, which is why in the top 5 list I put be mindful of approval farming. This is how attackers are going. Why exploit protocols where you just send out a bunch of emails after the latest compromise, whatever the next crypto mailing list they're getting compromised, just blast them all with email. Yeah, so that's the easiest way to gain assets. And again, even in the case of North Korean attack against Ronan, this was not a compromise of smart contracts. This was a traditional methodology that they use, which is go after the private keys. There was probably malware involved there somewhere, extract the private keys and so on. This is the most straightforward way to do this. They're not developing ODAs against Solidity language.
Okay, so, all right. We have one final question before we'll wrap this session.
Hey, I just have a quick question regarding like if you've seen any attacks that basically target like the API level that people use for these states, so things like the OpenSea API and projects that might rely on that as well, and if there've been
nothing that I've seen public. So I haven't seen public. We're talking about Web2 space. And that's a difficult thing to say, right? Because in Web3, I can pretty quickly say there's an attack. If it's on-chain, people are, folks like TechShield and Sam and like all the security researchers sitting on-chain, and they know when something happens because they see this massive funds transfer. No one is sitting in the middle of the internet pipes saying that, hey, there's an attack against API. So I'm sure they are happening, but we may not be just hearing about them because, well, some companies, they don't have as much interest or desire, or maybe it wasn't that impactful to disclose this for us to learn from. And that's the nature of Web3 versus Web2 security, where the Web2 security, like such as API attacks, are more opaque.
Awesome. So let's thank our speaker, Peter, for joining us and giving us this talk all the way from the US and the extra effort and joining it remotely as well. Thanks, Peter.